Good afternoon and welcome to the Soul Shop. I'm your host, Phyllis King. And today we will be speaking with Neale Donald Walsch, who is best known for his groundbreaking book, Conversations with God, which has been translated into 37 different languages. And there have been 4 additional incarnations of the book. And 7 of those books have made it to the New York Times bestseller list. What I would like to know first is completely self-serving, but I'm curious who you were before Conversations with God.
Well, gosh, I had about 7 or 8 different careers that I just reveled in, each one of which I thought was going to be what I would do for the rest of my life. But then, things would change. I started off as a newspaper reporter, and then I became the managing editor of a newspaper in Maryland, in a place called Annapolis, Maryland.
Yeah.
Then I wound up I decided to become a photographer. So I did some portrait photography for about 1.5 years. I was a musician. I played drums, traps in a band for a while. But then I thought, I really don't want to, spend the rest of my life in the music industry. So then I got into broadcasting, into radio, and I wound up spending almost 14 or 15 years as a professional in the broadcast industry. I was a disc jockey for a while, then a news director of a radio station.
Oh my goodness.
Then I had my own nationally syndicated talk show on the talk radio network for a couple of years. So I did that for a while. So I had all these different, ways of bringing income into my life, each one of which I loved. I just loved everything I was doing, but I just didn't feel fulfilled in the totality of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the things that I love to do. And I was, one of the lucky ones who got to do what he really loved to do 90% of the time in my life. I had only one job that I did really enjoy. And that lasted about 8 or 9 months. And I just said, no, I'm not doing it. And I left. And so I've been very, 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 very lucky, just extremely lucky in my life.
Wow. So were you said there were spiritual leanings before Conversations with God? I mean, did you dabble in different things or?
Well, yes. And since I was really 7 years old, honestly, I was raised in a Roman Catholic family. So I was imbued with, the awareness of there's this entity that was called God. And I was given a lot of teachings and doctrines and dogmas about God in my Roman Catholic upbringing, some of which I've discovered or come to an inner feeling did not really fit with me as being, the complete truth about God. I think there's something missing there, but it did give me a sense that, okay, there's more going on here than meets the eye.
Yes.
And I was so grateful for that because it gave me an awareness of life is larger than I thought it was. And there's more at play here.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and then I became very curious about that aspect of life. Mm-hmm. And even as I was engaging in these other careers from the age of 19 onward, I did dabble. I would read a little bit in the Quran. I'd read the Bhagavad Gita. I read a little bit in the Book of Mormon. I never really read through the entire documents, but I would, look here and look there. I was trying to find a place where I could feel comfortable in my relationship with God. I became a church-going Presbyterian for about 2 or 3 years. I almost went to Princeton Theological Seminary. The church that I was working with, I was a lay reader there, and they were willing to send me. They were willing to send me to Princeton and foot the bill, because the pastor there felt that I could be wonderful, but they were going to foot the bill if I agreed to come back to the church and serve as an assistant minister. And I agreed to that. But as it turned out, I never really followed through it. And because as I got deeper and deeper into Presbyterian theology, again, I realized, gosh, there are some fundamental points that I simply don't find comfortable. I don't agree with them inside of my soul. So I kind of left that particular discipline, but I continued to look. I looked at Judaism. I looked at Islam. I looked at, there are 4,200 religions
I didn't know that was the number, but
yes, 4,200 faith traditions on the face of the earth right now, being practiced on the earth today. And so I looked at the 8 or 9 largest ones, but I just couldn't get comfortable. So I said, with God, with what the world was saying to me about God. So, frankly, I set it aside for a few years, somewhere around my 25th or 27th birthday. I just said, okay, enough. And I dropped the subject and got on with my life, if you please. Mm-hmm. Only after I turned 50, somewhere around 53 or 54, did I really realize, that there was a huge emptiness in my life, and that I wanted to fill that. I wanted to get back to where I was when I was 18 or 19, looking deeply at these questions. And that's when of course, it didn't hurt that I was living on the sidewalk. I had lost everything in my life. I had to, the world hit me, Phyllis, with what I call the triple whammy. At one point in my life, in the same 10-day period, my relationship with my significant other ended. In the same week, 4, maybe 5 days later, I was downsized. I was laid off by the company, the radio station that I worked for. So I was out of a relationship and out of work in the same 5-day period. And then, as luck would have it, 2 days after that, some elderly gentleman smashed into my car trying to make a left turn in front of me. I had the right of way, and he just misjudged. The police even he admitted that he had made a mistake. So, but I was, hospitalized, and I had a broken neck. And I had a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture, not a hairline fracture, but a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. In other words, that's a fracture big enough to put a pencil through. Huge, huge fracture in my neck. And the doctor said to me, you have no right to be alive. People who suffer this kind of a huge break in their neck because of spinal cord implications and so forth,
right,
they're very, very fortunate to live through it. You're 1 in 1,000, and you're not even paralyzed. He says it's unheard of. And he looked me in the face, the surgeon looked at me in the face. So what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because you've been given.
Wow.
But I wound up, I had to live on the sidewalk because nobody would hire me. I was walking around wearing a collar, what they call a Philadelphia collar. It's a therapeutic device that keeps your head up because my neck could not support my head. The doctor said, think of a basketball on the head of a pin. That's what's going on right now. Your neck can't support your head. You will not take off this device until I tell you to. I had to wear that for 24 hours a day, sleeping, showering, whatever. For a year and a half. Nobody would hire me. I looked for any kind of job, receptionist at the front desk of a hotel. I applied to be a janitorial assistant in a school. I went to a supermarket and I said, look, I'll stock the shelves. I'll do anything. I don't have any money. And I ran out of my savings. I ran out of money. And finally, my landlord said, I can't do it. I hate to do it to you, but I can't keep you here.
Oh my goodness.
You're 3 months behind in your rent. I've got to ask you to leave.
Wow.
And I had nowhere to go.
Wow.
I wound up living on the sidewalk. I put my few possessions into a storage bin and gave them $30 or $40 for a month's storage. And then, little did I know, I thought I'll find something. No. A year later, I was still sleeping on the concrete and walking the streets with nowhere to live. Dealing with the weather, whatever it was. I had a little tent that I was given, so I was able to stay in the tent. So the rain wasn't falling on me, but the cold was permeating that tent. So winter, summer, spring, and fall, I'm in that tent for a year. And that caused me, of course, if you want to really get a liberal education, live on the sidewalk for a year.
Wow.
It's the great American nightmare. So I had, this interesting life, Phyllis, of the highs of success in my business, in my life, as a talk show host and all the rest. And then suddenly I'm a street person. And I'm walking up to people, Phyllis, one at a time. I can't wash my hair. I have no place to do it. If I did have any place to do it, I couldn't spend $1.39 for the shampoo because I had no money at all. I'd wake up every day with not a penny to my name. and have to approach people on the street and say, could you help a person in trouble, a little down on my luck? And some people would walk right by me and say nothing. Some people would wave their arm at me and say, oh, get a job. And then there were some people who would reach into their pocket and say, here, pal. And they'd give me a few quarters or a dollar bill, or maybe every so often somebody would slip me a 5 or a 10. And at the end of each day, if I was lucky, I had enough pulled together that I could go and grab a hamburger and some French fries and get through another day. But I lived that way for a solid year of my life. And that's at the end of that adventure, when I finally found a job, I was able to get a job somewhere at a small little radio station that was hiring a weekend fill-in person. So I got a part-time job weekends, but to me, that was a fortune. I was making, I think, $600 a month, but that was a fortune for me.
Right.
And you have to understand this, of course, was also 20, 25, 30 years ago, when $600 a month was more than it is now. And I was able to rent a little tiny little one-bedroom apartment behind someone's big fancy house of a very wealthy couple that had a grandma apartment out and back. And they leased it to me for like $200 or $300 a month, as I recall. So I had enough money to put a little bit of food in the house, but that was about it. And I woke up one morning at 4:30 in the morning and I thought, okay, what does it take to make life work? Come on, God, give me a break. What have I done wrong? I obeyed all the rules, maybe not all of them, but most of them. Help me out here. What have I done wrong? And why am I being landed on this way? And what do I need to do to make life work?
Yes.
And I began writing, honestly. I sat down at my dining room table. It's just a 2-room apartment, a living room. I call it a dining room. It's just an area where I had a table. And I wrote there, what does it take to make life work? I had a yellow legal pad.
Yeah.
What does it take? I was so angry.
Yes.
Tell me the rules. I remember writing, tell me the rules. I'll play. I promise I'll play. Just give me the damn rules.
Yes.
And that's when I began receiving this information. You really are. I remember the first message I received. I said, Neale, do you really want answers?
Yes, I read that. Yeah.
To all of these questions, or are you just venting? And I said, yeah, I am venting, but if you'd like to have, if you got any answers, I'd sure say I'd like to know what they are.
Yes.
And she said, wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven?
Right.
And I said, okay, now what's that supposed to mean? And there began a 2-way dialogue that answered every question I ever had about life, about work, about livelihood, about health, about relationships, about sexuality, about parenting, about creativity, about every aspect of life. I just kept on piling on the questions, and I was receiving answers, and I was writing them all down because I thought, at the beginning, this is fascinating. Where's this coming from? Answers I never even dreamt of. I was being told things, like, just to give you one example, there's no such thing as right and wrong. Neale, there's no such thing as right and wrong. There's only what works and what does not work, given what it is you're trying to do. That was one of hundreds of answers that were so outside of what I had been taught and what I had learned that I began keeping a record of it, a written record, which ultimately became a book called Conversations with God.
Well, and I have the one that's the trilogy. Well, you can see I have some stickies here. This is an experience. This is not a read. I think once you dive in, well, for me, it's an experience. I mean, I'm reading it, but I'm experiencing something as I go through it. And the one thing that I didn't yellow mark here is the question I'm going to ask or try to ask. There was a part in the book where you said to God, how do I know how do I know it's me? And then there was another part to it, which is, I've been doing spiritual work. I've been doing it. What makes this different, or something to that effect? Does that sound?
How do I know this is not my imagination?
Yes.
And
that you've already been doing spiritual work, and God said something to the effect, well, not really. You haven't really. And then I was thinking, is this me? But anyhow, I guess that's part of my question. What were you doing that you thought was spiritual work that wasn't, that turned into spiritual work?
I'd go to a lecture now and then, or read a passage in a book, or pick up something that I thought might be interested in, but I never had the discipline to read it from cover to cover. I would dive in and read a little bit of this, Maybe I took a workshop once to try to get, but I was just, God said to me, you're just dabbling. Surely you don't call this dabbling, doing your spiritual work. So I was called out, I was just really called out on it.
Okay.
And God wasn't making me wrong, just for the sake of accuracy. She was like letting me know, Neale, really. Yeah. So I got to take a look at myself and what I was passing off as doing my spiritual work.
So we're going to dive in a moment to the juiciest stuff. But I guess the life on the street, losing everything, the accident, living with just pennies. That was not an accident. What context is that for you in your life at this point?
Well, I'm pretty clear looking back on it that it was one of the greatest blessings of my life.
Oh, man.
It was given to me as an opportunity. Excuse me.
Opportunity.
It was given to me as an opportunity for me to decide and to declare, to express and to fulfill, to become and to experience, to demonstrate who I really am. And I had to, I see, again, looking back on it, I see that I had to really find myself in a position where I had to let go of every expectation, every possession, everything I ever wanted or thought I needed, everything that I thought was going to be the source of my happiness in life. I had to be down to ground zero. I literally had one pair of pants, a pair of jeans, 2 shirts, a pair of shoes, and that was the sum total of my earthly possessions. And so I realized, this is what it means. I was on the street. I had no way of getting from place to place. Finally, after I got my part-time job, I was able to afford a little jalopy, and I managed to go to a used car dealer and get the worst car on the lot for a few $100s. At least it got me from place to place. But for most of that year, I was on foot. I couldn't go from place to place. Mm-hmm. So to make matters worse, at one point I had a car and it was stolen.
Oh.
Yeah, my car was actually stolen from the street. And I called the police, and I went to a phone booth. I had a dime and I put the dime in and I called the police. I said that my car's been stolen. The guy said, how long, when did you notice it missing? I said, well, last night. He said, last night? Because this was the next morning around 9 o'clock. He said, it's long gone by now, my friend. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about 12 hours or 14 hours ago, that car has been parted out. It's been torn apart and sold for the parts. Mm-hmm. So you can forget about that. And so what little I did have in the world was in the backseat of that car. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to have nothing. I'm supposed to be down to NOTHING. And I was not a young man. It's not like 36 or 24. I was 53 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was experiencing this, and I thought, terrific. So I think that that was okay. But you see, it got me to a place where my whole value system shifted.
Yeah.
And that's what opened me to what I was hearing in my conversations with God, which I would have rejected out of hand 30 years earlier.
Right. Well, okay. We're going to do more on conversations with God. And by the way, everyone, you can also put your questions in the chat room and I'll give those to Neale one by one. You wrote another book that I haven't had the good fortune to read. And I'm not remembering the title. Something about the only thing we need to know in life, or the little things we need to know in life, or something about 98. We're doing 98%, focusing on 98% of the wrong thing.
Yeah. The book is called The Only Thing That Matters.
The Only Thing That Matters. Thank you, C. So.
And that is the first paragraph. The first paragraph says 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. And only if you've lived on the sidewalk for a year can you have that perspective. That's what I'm saying when I say it changed my entire perspective. Because after that, what I decided was really important in my life and what I was willing to spend my emotional and physical energy on, that list got to be very, very small. I wasn't battered about anymore by, the emotional ups and downs of life. Does she love me? Does she not? Will she say yes when I ask her to go out to dinner? Will I get the job? Will I have this? Will I have that? Can I afford the car? All of a sudden, nothing mattered. I mean, that used to matter. And I wound up putting that all later in a book called The Only Thing That Matters. Because I refused to be one of those 98% of the world's people that were spending 98% of their time on things that simply don't matter.
What matters?
Who I experience myself as being in this moment now. Who I experience myself as being. And I don't mean an occupation, radio talk show host or reporter or whatever. I mean, how do I experience myself as being? Am I being gentle? Am I being kind? Am I being compassionate? Am I being wise? Am I being clear? Am I being patient? Am I being forgiving? Am I being deeply understanding? Am I being a friend? And finally, am I being the epitome and the demonstration of pure love? When I could answer yes to the largest number of those questions, then I realized two amazing things. I realized one, I never felt better in my life about life than I did when I could say yes to those questions. And number two, all the things I had been striving for and straining for and stressing for in my life began falling in on me automatically, virtually without effort. And so I realized, oh, you know what? There was a guy who once said something about this. I think, as I recall, I think he said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you. And the kingdom of, and then I thought, okay, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. What's that got to do with me being patient, kind, compassionate, caring, understanding? Then I remember something else that this guy said. He said, oh, I see, you don't understand. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And you keep on looking for it somewhere outside of yourself. If you go to enough churches, enough synagogues, enough temples, enough lectures, enough workshops, read enough books, Neale, it's not out there. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And it's not when you call for it, but when you call it forth that you begin to experience who you really are.
Oh, I see.
And then all these things fall in on you because it's an energy attractor. You're energetic. The energy you put into the world begins attracting opportunities, friends, everything you've ever wanted. Just falls in on you virtually without effort.
Is that what happened to you? I mean, clearly after conversations with God.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
okay, so I will ask just a couple of questions and then I'll let people ask their own questions. But how do we stop creating what we don't want?
By becoming clear that there is nothing that is not to our benefit. So we stop creating what we don't want because what you resist persists. So I stopped resisting what's showing up. And in that way, I didn't create what I don't want because there was nothing anymore that I don't want. Listen, here we go again. I'm sorry I'm preaching the same sermon.
It's all right.
But when you've lived on the sidewalk for a year, there's nothing that you don't want. I mean, everything above that is something that you're okay with. It doesn't matter if you could be in a 2-room apartment and say, this is something I don't want. I want a bigger place, or I want a better car, or I want more. But after you've been on the sidewalk for a year, there's nothing that falls into that category. And so you begin to have a whole different idea about what matters to you and what you want, and how I can not continue to create what I don't want is by not having anything that I don't want, by accepting and embracing whatever shows up in life, even those things which I might have thought originally were unwelcome, by accepting and embracing with gratitude. And by expressing gratitude for everything that's showing up in my life. Because as I was told later in my conversations with God, all change is change for the better. You simply don't understand that because you're not functioning at a level of mastery. So I decided to try that out. I decided to talk. As I began being booked for lectures and talks around the world, and I've since traveled the world giving lectures all over from here to Tokyo to Berlin to Buenos Aires and back. I've been all over the world, not bragging, just saying. And I've been, wherever I've talked to people, I've asked a question. How many of you have had an experience that when it was happening, you thought was one of the worst things that could ever happen to you in your life, only to experience a few weeks or a few months or perhaps a year or two later that it was in fact one of the best things that ever happened to you in your life? How many of you have had that experience? And all the hands, 98% of the hands in the room go up. Yeah, I've had that experience. And then I said, well, you know what God said to me about that? A master is one who knows this ahead of time. Not in retrospect, not after the fact. Oh, I see. This is one of the best things that ever happened to me, because if it hadn't been for this, then there wouldn't be that. But the master is the one who sees this in the moment that this horrible thing is happening and expresses inwardly gratitude for even that. And the expression of that energy of gratitude flips the energy that you're projecting into the experience and transforms the experience itself.
Those of us who haven't lived on the street, I mean, is it just practice? What does it take to not be in resistance? Because it seems so normal to do that. Or are we just natural complainers as human beings?
All of us have lived on the street figuratively, maybe not literally, but all of us have had our dark night of the soul. I've never met a single person who hasn't felt they might as well be living on the street, because everything that was important to them, everything that meant anything to them, no longer has the same meaning. Even if they still have possession of it, it no longer has the same meaning. It suddenly doesn't make any difference what kind of a car is in the driveway or how big your house is, how many rooms. It doesn't matter. All of a sudden, we've all had our dark night of the soul. And so what causes us to stop resisting and to just getting into a place of allowing is surrendering to life as it is through the process of seeing, oh, I see. I came here to the realm of physicality for this purpose. You see, my dear Phyllis, there's a huge question that most people have never asked themselves. The question is, who do I think I am? Do I think I'm a physical entity? You know, like a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea? More complex, perhaps, fair enough, but a life form in physical expression. You know, I'm born, I live, I die, and that's the beginning and the end of it. Or is it possible, just possible, that I'm more than that? Is it possible that this is not who I am? That I'm not my body? That I'm not my mind? Is it possible that who I am is a spiritual being, having a body and having a mind, but having placed myself into this body with this mind in this physical realm for a particular and singular purpose, having to do with the agenda of my soul? Now, interestingly enough, with all the other disagreements they have, virtually every one of the 4,200 religions on the earth teach that. They almost all agree on that. Yes, you are a spiritual entity, and you are here to complete a spiritual agenda. So I realized, okay, there's something important for me to understand. And that's when I stopped resisting, when I got clear. What you resist persists. And what you look at and embrace clearly disappears. That is, it ceases to have its illusory form, and you see it for what it really is. And then you express gratitude.
You made a statement, and well, God made a statement in the book about gratitude and appreciation, that we can't use gratitude as a manipulation, that we have to be rather in a state of appreciation. What's the difference?
Well, you can't, appreciation is a state where we want what is so to enlarge, like a property appreciates in value.
Mm-hmm.
So appreciation is a word that means it gets larger,
Mm-hmm.
as your house might appreciate in value. So appreciation is different from gratitude, because gratitude can sometimes be a manipulation. We think that, okay, if I say I'm grateful, then God will be happy and the universe will see that I'm obeying the rules,
Right.
and whatever. So, but if gratitude is genuine, if it's real gratitude and not faux gratitude, if it's absolutely true and sincerely believed, I am grateful, even for this present experience that I'm now moving through,
Mm-hmm.
then we start to see the magic that can occur when we work closely with the energetic that is life itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin to projecting a particular kind of energy into the energetic field,
Mm-hmm.
so to manifest the reality
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for which we yearn.
I noticed on the website you have a mentoring program. It said it's starting in July. Do you have openings for that?
I think it starts in August, but I think July is the.
You take a very small number of people. What happens in that group?
I work with them. They're given a 12-week, a 3-month course of study with, I think, 36 individual lessons over individual lessons that they get to try out. In other words, we give them the lesson, and then we say, go out there in the real world and apply this and see what happens. And keep a running notebook on what's going on and how these lessons could affect or could work in your life. As well, every month I spend an hour with each person individually.
Oh, wow.
Not collectively, but individually. I work alone, one-on-one, with everybody in the course once a month for 3 months, so that everybody in the program has 3 individual hour-long, usually they're longer than an hour, but they're supposed to be an hour, interactive process, interactive conversation with me, where we look at people's challenges, and I help them to see how they could apply the messages of conversations with God in their life.
Well, wonder anyone interested in that, go to the website and look at that. There's someone. Well, let me see. But I have a question here. Let me see what this person is saying before I don't want to keep. Olivia just wants to know that you keep referring to God as she. Was the voice you heard of females? Was it a voice? How does God appear to you?
He doesn't appear to me in any particular way.
Okay.
I don't see God visually, or nor do I imagine, God in my mind. I refer to God as he or she interchangeably, because I'm very clear that God does not have a gender, a cultural heritage, a particular religion. I have rejected the God of what I call the God of the brand name. So the God is not necessarily Catholic or Islam or, Jewish or whatever. So I don't see that God has a particular and specific identity. Mm-hmm. So even when they started making audio books of my material, I insisted that the voice of God be read interchangeably by a male actor and a female actor.
Oh.
So Ed Asner and Ellen Burstyn.
Oh, right. I saw that. Yes.
2 wonderful actors read the voice of God interchangeably on the audio books. They would sometimes interrupt each other in the middle of a sentence. Ed would start the sentence and Ellen would finish it, so the listener would get very clearly the idea, we're not playing the game called God is a man.
Right. I get it. Okay.
Nor are we playing the game called God is a woman. We're just allowing, but God said to me in his conversations with me, I will show up in any form that allows you to most rapidly accept and embrace me as part of your life.
Has everything you've written subsequently, has it been from God? I mean, as if it never would, but has it been consciously that you are doing God? Am I saying this correctly?
Well, yes.
Okay.
I think I've been, how I would put it is, I think I've been inspired. I allowed myself to be inspired by God and open to what it is that I feel deep inside of me. I want to make something clear here.
Okay.
I don't think and my writing has said this in book after book, I don't see myself as different from anybody else. That divine wisdom and divine clarity resides in the heart of all of us. Mm-hmm. It's just that some of us have given ourselves permission to believe that that's true, to access it, and in fact, even to openly share it. Mm-hmm. Whereas most people are in a place of self-denial. Mm-hmm. So they because we've been taught. We've actually been taught by our religions and by our cultures and by our societies. We've been taught not to speak that way. We've been taught that if we talk like that we are blaspheming, we are apostates, we are heretics, and we are being wildly inappropriate. So who do you think you are, God? So it becomes very difficult and very challenging in our culture to say that God resides inside of every one of us. But there's no separation between us and God, or between God and any sentient being in the cosmos. So yes, whenever I write anything, I go within, I get in touch with, I just finished a book about a month. I'm trying to say about a year and a month ago, my latest book called The God Solution. Yeah. And it offers a solution to humanity's ongoing challenges. And I absolutely believe that book was inspired by God. So I don't see myself much different from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or any really writer who feels that they have been inspired by what I'm going to call, if we want to use a theological term, the Holy Spirit.
So you actually feel that sense of inspiration when you're writing.
Oh yeah. In fact, sometimes things come out of off the keyboard. These days, I'm writing on a computer, and at the beginning, it was all by longhand on a piece of a yellow legal pad. But yeah, I'll watch something come up on the screen and go, "My gosh, I never thought about that." Or else I'll catch myself saying, "I never said it that way. Where did that come from?" So I'll get it. I have a direct sense of downloading something from another source, but not a source outside of myself, from another source that lives inside of all of us. And then I ask my audiences one more question, one more statement. I've had occasion to ask my audiences as well. How many of you have ever had the experience where somebody came to you, they were deeply in trouble, maybe even threatening suicide, or certainly threatening to be very unhappy and very sad and very angry, and they've come to you for help of some kind? How many of you have had the experience of actually talking to them and bringing them down from the ceiling, actually bringing them back down to earth, where they would look at you and say, "Wow, this has really helped me. Thank you so much." And they walk out of the house, and you look to yourself and say, "Where did that come from?" How many of you have had that experience? And again, over 70% of the hands in the audience go up. "Yeah, I've had that experience." I said, "Yeah, see, it's not a new experience. It's just that I do it more often."
I see. Well, I think you know that I've always been psychic, and I tune in somewhere to get my information. But I even thought that was separate from me. But yeah, I guess you're saying it's not.
There's nothing separate from anything else. Conversations with God, Book 1, Chapter 1. All things are one thing. There is only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. The biggest problem facing humanity has been brought on by our belief in separation. We think that we're separate from God.
Okay.
and therefore separate from each other and separate from life, in a sense that life is going on around us, but we don't have any control over it. We're just watching it. So we're separate. And then we decide that we're separate from each other, which creates a separation sociology, which produces a desire to join in groups, to become members of smaller groups so we don't feel so alone. So we join political parties, we join other organizations, we join religions, we try to gather together so we can say, at least there's more than one of us who thinks the way I think. And so we join these organizations in order to produce the end of separation. But the problem with the separation sociology is that it inevitably produces a separation pathology. Pathological behaviors of self-destruction, behaviors that say, you don't understand, my group, the group I'm in, is more important and more right. We are in the right and your group is in the wrong. So we're going to have to get you for being in the wrong. We're going to have to oppose everything that you want and maybe even fight you with violence because we're right and you're wrong. Because our group is over here and your group is over there. You crazy, crazy people, you left-wing nut jobs, or you right-wing crazy nut jobs, or whoever you are, angry women, or bossy men, or the rich, or the poor, or the gays, or the straights, or the Democrats, or the I can't say the word. They don't allow me to say dirty words on the air, so I can't say the word. But just kidding. Everybody relax. Just have a little fun. But the point is, we join in these little clusters, and then we say our cluster is the cluster that has it right. If only you could get it right, we could agree with you, but you're not getting it right. And that creates humanity's pathological behaviors.
Yeah. Another thing that struck me in the book, is there a correct way to pray, or is praying useful?
The answer is no to the first question, yes to the second. There's no correct way to pray. Even before you ask, I will have answered, saith the Lord. So you could just, no, there's no correct way to pray. Just the desire that wells up within us is sufficient. We don't even have to put it into words. We think God is like hard of hearing. I'm sorry, what did you say? Just the feeling is received by that which we call God. But does prayer work? Yeah. Is prayer useful? Absolutely. Because it sets your intention and life proceeds out of your intention for it. So I was told in conversations with God. Neale, life proceeds out of your intentions for it. So get real clear on what your intentions are. Specifically clear, not broadly clear, like I want to have a nice life or I want to be happy. No. Get specifically clear. What do you intend for this day, for this week, for this month, for this year, and yes, for this life? What are you doing here? Why are you here? What is this all about? Become not reactive, but creative in your life. Interestingly enough, the word create and the word react are the same word. Only the C and the R gotten confused. When the C and the R are in the right place, then you see who you really are. Create or react. That's your choice in every moment. And what we are invited to do is to create who we are, to imagine who we are, to see who we are. I have a mantra that I use in my life. This is the mantra that I use. The first time I see anybody on any given day, maybe it's the lady on the pillow next to me, or perhaps the family member across the room, or maybe my neighbor across the street, or maybe a total stranger across town. But the first time I see anybody for the first time in any given day, I say this to myself quietly. I don't say it out loud because nobody would understand, but I say it to myself. I have come that you may have life, and that you may have it more abundantly. Your life will be made better today from my having passed through it. I promise you.
Beautiful.
Now, you can't say that every day the first time you see somebody without it changing your life and changing theirs.
Mm. I love that. I'm going to continue to ask questions, folks. You guys who have joined us today, if you have a question for Neale, put it in the chat room and I will make sure he hears it. We seem to have the whole relationship process a little bit askewed. Those of us who keep bumping up against outcomes we don't want. What are we missing?
The reason for relationship, at least if you're committing the same, I'm going to use the word crime metaphorically.
Yes.
But at least if you're committing the same crime that I was committing in my relationships, I was getting into relationships for all the wrong reasons. Because first of all, I didn't even know what the reason was that I was even here. Why am I on the earth? And then secondarily, why am I entering into this particular interaction that I call a relationship? Why am I doing this? And so I've used my life to question myself with regard to those particular activities and those inquiries. Once I got straight, but it took me moving through many relationships unsuccessfully. I've been married more than once. Actually, I've been married more than twice. I've been married actually more than 3 times. Actually, I've been married more than 4 times.
Okay.
So when I go, no, actually, I've been married more than 5 times. So when I look at this, well, actually, I've been married more than 6 times. So when I look at this question, actually, I'm in now my 7th marriage.
Oh, man.
I'm not making this up. I didn't have 7 live-in partners, 7 friendships. I had 7 legal ring on the finger marriages.
Wow. Okay.
And my 7th one is now in its 15th year. That's a huge record for me.
Yes.
Because I finally got clear on what I'm doing in the relationship and what pure love is really all about. Because pure love wants, needs, expects, and demands nothing in return. And I was entering into relationships as if they were trade agreements. Like nations have trade agreements with each other. Red China and
yes,
they have a trade relationship with Malaysia or whatever. We have trade arrangements. So I had trade agreements with people. I'll trade you what I've got. You trade me what you've got. And on Valentine's Day, I would find the perfect Valentine's Day card. My dearest beloved, I trade you very much.
Trade.
And I will never stop trading you.
Okay.
I will trade you until the end of time.
Okay.
But if you stop trading me, if I don't get from you what I want, need, desire, and expect from you, the deal is off. Mm-hmm. But when I got into my relationship with my present wife, God love her, I decided, what if I didn't need, expect, require, or demand one single thing from this person at any time? What if I just loved her, not from what I can get out of it, but from what I can put into it?
Wow.
What if I saw a relationship as simply a blessed, blissful, golden opportunity to demonstrate, to express who I really am? Could there be anything more blissful than that? And I've discovered in this relationship with my lovely wife that nothing can even come close to what I'm now describing. My wife said something to me about 2.5 years ago that really stopped me in my tracks, because I really understood the importance of what she was saying. She had been out for the afternoon with her mom. They had been out, shopping and having lunch and so forth, having a mommy-daughter day. But she came home around 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon. She opened the front door. I was sitting in the chair. I started getting out of the chair to welcome her home. She said, no, stay where you are. I said, okay. So I sat back down. She walked over to my chair, sat on the ottoman in front of my chair, put my face in her hands, held my face in her hands, and she just looked at me and she said, "You are so safe."
Sick?
safe.
Oh, safe.
You are
Oh.
so safe.
Oh. Mm.
And I looked at her and I went,
Mm.
I said, what do you mean?
Mm.
She said, I come home to you and you don't want, need,
Oh.
require, or demand anything from me. You just want to love me. I have never felt so safe.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Now, I'm not bragging, but you asked me a question.
No.
So I'm telling you what I've learned, but it took me, Phyllis, a long time. I'm not a young man.
Mm.
You know, I'm going to be 80 years old soon.
Mm.
So I have a thing that I like to say to myself: so old, so soon, so smart, so late.
Mm. Mm.
So I'm doing all I can to share what I've come to understand with as many people as possible. So at least they don't have to wait until they're 75 to start picking up on some of the clues that every great messenger has been sending us from the beginning of time.
Mm.
It's just not new information.
Mm.
It's just not what people would call New Age philosophy.
Right.
We've been told this from the beginning of recorded history. And all the great masters of all the great spiritual traditions have said the same thing, each in their own way.
Mm.
Love, love, love everyone. Love even your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Do good to those who would do you evil. When a man slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer him your left. And when a man steals your coat, give him your shirt as well.
Mm.
And when a man demands that you walk 1 mile with him, go with him 20.
Mm.
And raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well.
Mm.
I've decided that maybe he had something there. And I wonder what life would be like if I began living by the old golden rule instead of the new golden rule. The old golden rule, of course, was do unto others as you would have it done unto you. The new golden rule is he who has the gold rules.
That's true. That's the new golden rule, certainly.
We're not playing by that in my life. I'm not going there. Excuse me. I'm not going there. And I invite all those who would like to find a new way to live to pick up a copy of any one of those books, not just the books I've written. They've been written by many, many messengers these days. Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Byron Katie, Wayne Dyer, God bless him.
Yeah.
There's just endless number of people who've written remarkable books with great insights. Pick up any one of them, but read them deeply, take notes in the margin, and then decide, I'm going to live a new way beginning tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be able to say in my heart to the first person I see that day, your life will be made better today for my having passed through it.
Mm.
I promise
you. Mm. That is so beautiful. What is next for you besides writing more books and sharing this wisdom with people?
Living it fully. That's my bucket list. You know, I talk a good game, but I go through the day and there are moments when I forget who I am. I'll never forget a few years ago, this is now, I guess, many years ago, but I was deeply in love with this young lady. I had this going on this older man, younger girl thing. She was whatever she was, 22 or 23. And I was 45 or something. And anyway, we were in this little relationship. But I had a moment of disagreement with her about something. And I was being not my highest self. And at one point, she looked at me with her little 23-year-old face and she said, you know something? This is not the most attractive part of you. I never forgot, out of the mouths of children, I never, ever forgot from that day to this. I was stunned by the clarity of her observation. I just stopped and went, I see that it might not be. I just forgot myself. I forgot myself. So what's next for Neale? To never forget myself anymore. To remember, that is to become a member once again of the body of God. To remember who I really am. To make sure that everyone whose life I touch says, who was that who just walked through here? Not as a case of self-aggrandizement, but as a process of self-realization.
I guess my last question before I let you go is, I don't know if it was in the book or in one of your videos, something about the 10 illusions that we have, which is a whole nother program. But I believe you said something to the effect that any answer we want to receive, there's a place we can go inside of ourselves to get that.
Yes, I believe that profoundly.
How do we do that exactly?
We just there's no particular process. Each of us has our own, our own process. For some, it might be meditation. For some, it might be prayer. For some, it might be guided visualization. For some, there's just no particular way. But we do have the intention of calling forth, as I've said before, from within us, the deepest wisdom and the clearest answer. Like I'm sure that Barry has done that. Arnie has done that. Rachel has done that, even though that's why none of them have any questions. Barry's been listening to me now for an hour. He doesn't have a single question. I thought he'd be raising his hand, but no. And Arnie doesn't either, and Rachel doesn't. In fact, nobody has put a single question in the chat box because they already know the answers. And they're not going to play the game called Neale has the answers that I don't have, which is why Barry is sitting there just listening to me. He won't even crack a smile. But I'll get him to smile before, at least I got him to smile a little bit.
Well, and I think at the very beginning of the book, you something to the effect, again, paraphrasing, God says he's talking to all of us. He, she is speaking to all of us, but are we listening?
Yeah.
Can we hear?
The question is not to whom is God talking. The question is who is listening. So yes, that's the whole point of the Conversations with God dialogue, that God is talking to all of us all the time. But we have to trust, even when we do get an answer, a brilliant idea or a sudden insight or what we call an epiphany or a sudden awareness, so many of us reject it out of hand. We dismiss it or we don't pay sufficient attention to it. I don't dismiss any psychic hit that I receive. When it goes into my mind, I go, aha, another conversation with God. Terrific. And I follow my insight and I do what's suggested that I do.
Well, everyone, please visit Neale's website. And if you're interested in the mentorship program that's happening in August, I would avail myself of that if you can. And you have most certainly made my life better today. Thank you very much. And I'm sure everyone who's listening, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a complete joy.
You're very sweet. My website, in case you're wondering, folks, is nealedonaldwalsch.com. Quite simple. Just go there and you'll find all the information that you might need if you choose to explore more fully some of the things that I've been sharing. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. I've enjoyed it immensely.